Am I the only one who remembers the years of not 9 In fact, going a little further back in time, there was a period when my dad would carry a briefcase that contained a satellite phone. And in our mind, that was a mobile phone. It's been several years since then, and the evolution of the mobile phone over that time has been astronomical. Not just in aesthetics, but also in computing power. We've gone from making basic voice calls with our phones to controlling our lives entirely from these devices. My phone has evolved from capturing grainy basic photos to something that can produce professional-grade photo shoots, and often does. It is my bank, my office, my calendar, my personal assistant, my TV, my Bible, my dictionary, my life companion. Don't tell my wife. But honestly, I cannot imagine how my life would function without this little device. Some of you may be surprised to know that of the 212 million mobile subscribers in Nigeria, 100 million of those are in the dark. They probably don't stream new music and Nollywood films online. Most certainly, they don't have access to the internet. That's because they're still on 2G networks and they're not connecting to the internet due to the capacity of the mobile devices that they carry. That gap in connectivity, the difference between full internet-connected device owners and those still in the dark, is called the digital divide. Welcome to Tech into the Future. Today, we're talking about the evolution of mobile technologies, the digital divide, and how we bring all Nigerians into the connected age. Stay. Hello and welcome to Tech into the Future, a brand new show where we talk about everything that's happening in tech and how it affects you. My name is Toriola. I'm the CEO of Tech Cabal, a digital publication that's been covering African tech for the last decade.
And I am Ngozi Madueke-Dozie. I look after Android partnerships for West Africa. And I, alongside Tomiwa, will be your guide through everything technical, technology related for Nigeria, Africa, and the world.
So, today we're talking about the digital divide. Yes. We're talking about the growth in mobile technology from not of the 90s.
So can I tell you?
Yeah.
Honestly, I remember my dad had one of those phones where you'd have to go to an elevated place and then you open the briefcase and then you have to bring out like a paper to see the number that you want to dial. And that was mobile. It was still very fascinating.
I remember that. I remember when my dad got the very first, the one inside your car, and it was just a car phone.
Very cool.
Like, yeah, no. It's been interesting to kind of watch the evolution, and I don't know if you went through the whole thing. So we had the Nokias.
Dude, I went
you
through
had the Sony Ericsson.
Yes.
You know.
The Nokia, the Flip. Well, now Flip is back.
Flip is back.
Flip then was like
very, very different.
Exactly.
Did you get the Motorola Razr?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I also had a BlackBerry. And I know by BlackBerry time, it was still very cool. You could do email on your phone. I was like, what? This is magic.
I had the BlackBerry. I was working at Atlantic Records at the time. And I was that person where like my girlfriend would be like, why are you sending emails at dinner? Why are you? Because it just stayed with you everywhere. And it was the first time where, you know, it felt,
Can I tell you? I probably was the last person when I worked at Meta, Facebook then when I worked there. I was probably the last person to have a BlackBerry. And I remember being in Palo Alto at the time, and I had the tech thing to do, and I took my phone in, and they're like, what is this? They're like, oh, this is how Africa experiences the internet. Like, it was a thing.
Oh, no.
And I was such a BlackBerry, loyalist.
Yeah.
And so to see the evolution is amazing, right? To see all the things that we can do with technology, with your mobile device, such that it's, like you said, it is everything.
It's everything. It's like
what wakes you up in the morning?
Reminders to take your medicine in the morning.
Yes.
It's like,
what wakes you up in the morning?
The alarm clock that wakes you up.
Your phone.
It's the place you track your workouts in the gym. Yep. It's the place you track your appointments.
Before you sleep, when you're thinking, oh, what time should I wake up? What do you check? Your calendar on your phone.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No.
And so, yes.
It's taken over our lives. It's incredible. I think the technology growth behind it has also been fascinating.
Yes.
So going from 1G to 5G.
Yes.
And what that's enabled, the speed of connectivity, the access to the web, the access to the world has been really, really interesting. And it's an interesting for Nigeria as we look at what this growth enables, because you and I are talking about managing your schedule. We're talking about accessing information. We're talking about accessing the world. And I'm sure that your phone is permanently, if you're not on a permanent 5G connection, you're on a 4G connection.
Yes.
So it's amazing how many of the people in our population actually are still on devices with connections that don't allow them to access the web fully.
So that's the stat that is staggering, right? 100 million is a lot. 100 million is perhaps almost half of the people that are mobile subscribers don't know what we're talking about. Like this thing about streaming music, they don't know. Literally, the phone functions for three things, right? It's a torch, it's how they make calls, and it's how they send text messages.
That's wild.
It
There's
is.
no OP. There's
Nothing. Everything.
There's no moving money.
Nothing.
There's no
Exactly. Yeah. So here's now the question: is in as much as I appreciate
USSD, but
yes, USSD. They do have USSD.
Yeah.
So here's the question: in as much as I appreciate, we that are online appreciate the 5G evolution. My question is, those that are on 2G, that means they haven't even gotten to 4G to get to 5G.
Yeah.
And the concern, not unlike the conversation we had last week, is saying that in as much as we want to move and keep up with, technological advancement, what efforts are being made to make sure we bring those on 2G along? Otherwise, we're going to create such a laguna that by the time, we then want to focus on it, it will be way too much of a task. And the other question is, who's responsible?
So you're going to have the chance to ask those questions because I think you've got an interview coming up. And we're going to be able to speak with the executives of one of the most important sort of companies,
yes,
the
indeed.
most important company in Nigerian telco space. And we'll have that conversation with him and see what is he thinks is their responsibility. And then we'll have the chance to sort of come back in future episodes and speak to the regulators and the other players who have a role to play in this. You are on Tech into the Future. We're going to go to break right now, but stay with us. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to Tech into the Future on Arise News.
Earlier, Ngozi spoke with Mr. Carl Toriola, the CEO of MTN Nigeria, on bridging the digital divide in Nigeria, being a publicly listed company, and driving the adoption of 5G in Nigeria. Here's that interview.
With us, we have Carl Toriola. Carl is the CEO for MTN Nigeria. MTN is the largest telco in Nigeria with over 70 million subscribers. Welcome. Thank you for joining us, Carl.
Thank you for having me, Ngozi. It's a pleasure.
So let's start off. How is MTN doing? How was 2023?
Well, first of all, we're in a closed period, so I can only speak about our numbers up to Q3. It's been a challenging year, but we always count our blessings and our good fortunes. We've achieved a lot. Clearly, the macro is affecting MTN as it's affecting everyone else in the corporate sector and individuals as well. But like I said, we count our blessings. We continue to roll out our network, accelerate our 5G, quadrupling our 5G coverage. We're focusing on enterprise customers. We're focusing on the digital space. And we're gradually starting to get momentum on fiber to the home.
So over the last 5 years, MTN has gone through quite a bit of transformation. If I go way back to even just the infamous fine from the regulator, and then there's revamping of your board, there was 4G, launching 5G, there is getting the PSB license, there's going public. So much has happened within the structure internally. And then of course there's the economic headwinds as well, especially the devaluating of the Naira as it affects a lot of your dollar commitments. Again, not unique to MTN, but what MTN has managed to do, however, is deliver solid numbers every year. How do you run a profitable business?
Well, it's been extremely challenging, but we've had a good run for quite a number of years, and the fine is actually now getting towards 9 years ago. And a lot has happened from then till now. But you're right, the devaluation of the Naira towards the dollar does affect our operating costs exponentially.
Right.
Does affect our finance costs because we have dollar debt on our balance sheet, and we'll see the results. We've seen some of that in the September results. We'll see when we announce the full year results, the total impact. And one thing I want to point out is that unlike a lot of other businesses, we continuously need to reinvest significant amount of dollars in capex every year. I'm talking $500, $600, $700 million of capex every year. And it takes twice as much naira now to buy those dollars. So it's been challenging. How do we run a successful business? I think I've always said at the beginning of the successful business, the value comes from the customer. And the first and most important thing is to ensure that we have the best quality of service available in the country. So we draw the maximum spend from the customers towards us because they're relatively satisfied with us. I say relatively because we always do have complaints and we acknowledge that we're imperfect. But the second thing is a ruthless drive towards efficiency. Okay, we're always looking at ways of optimizing our cost structures, and any business that's not the most efficient eventually will get eaten up by their competitors because their competitors will be able to out-invest them with the margins that they create by efficiency. And the third thing is we are localizing as much of our spend as possible. So we are moving a lot of our spend, which we would have paid to foreign suppliers, IT suppliers, infrastructure suppliers, to Nigerian companies and developing them and helping them grow businesses in that line.
Fantastic. In fact, it's funny you say that because when you talk about relative, what's the word you use now? About your service.
Satisfaction.
Relative satisfaction. My next question was going to be, having gone public, you find everybody's eyes are on your numbers, right? Everybody now feels a little more invested. I wonder if that creates additional pressure. Right? Now, if I try to make a call and it doesn't go through, I say, oh, MTN, because I feel like an owner, part of the ownership structure. Has that affected affected your decision making when it comes to the pressure that, well, first of all, maybe I should ask, is there any pressure? Is there any difference before going public and now after having gone public?
Well, let me first be transparent. The company went public under my predecessor, Freddie Muma. But without a doubt, being a public listed company holds you to higher standards of accountability. And most important of all, governance. When you're listed, you have to answer to governance structures in the NGX and in the SEC, as well as a host of other regulators. So that is one of the biggest demands. But the second one, like you say, is around people feeling that they have a vested interest. And we have 6 million odd indirect shareholders in MTN, well over 140,000 direct shareholding, the indirect ones through pension funds. But aside from that, people feel like MTN is such an intricate part of their lives and such an important part of their digital and connectivity lives that every time something goes wrong, they want you to hear about it. And that's understandable and accepted. I get hundreds of emails, WhatsApps, SMSs on complaints, and to the best of my ability, I address in some way or the other through my staff. I can't do everything myself, through my team, every one of those questions. But the other thing is, when you're the biggest, the standards that are expected of you are always higher than the rest. So it is a challenge, but hey, we live for challenges, and that's what makes me get up to and go to work excited every day.
Fantastic. Speaking of challenges, I must congratulate MTN for the launch of 5G. I know that took a massive effort. I'm curious though, when you think about the number, so MTN has over 70 million subscribers. I believe it is probably roughly around 50% of your subscriber base that are still on 2G. My question is, as you've launched 5G, is there any concern about how we bridge that digital divide? Because it's almost like that laguna continues to grow. Obviously, the technology continues to evolve and get better. What efforts are MTN and I guess the other stakeholders doing about bridging that divide?
So I'm going to answer that question in a bit of a roundabout sort of way. When 4G was rolled out across the world, there were some that believed that 4G wasn't for Africa. And that was a mistake that a few people made to their peril. MTN, not just in Nigeria, but across the group, firmly believes that the best technology is required in every African country. And 4G has been a runaway success for us and for our competitors as well, whom we respect, we have a healthy respect for. 5G instrumental towards accelerating digitization. And as it stands today, well over 50%, we crossed that mark at half year 2023. Well over 50% comes from from data. And the contribution of voice as a percentage contribution is reducing. So that gives you a bit of the sense of numbers. Now, a lot of people are shifting their consumption from traditional voice and circuit switch message services to data services. And probably the biggest barrier to that is actually the cost of handsets.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the biggest drivers. Of course, the affordability of data is a key issue, but the affordability is a challenge to actually produce that data capacity in a rapidly devaluating, currency devaluating macro. So the cost of devices, I know the Honorable Minister is very much focused on acceleration of digitization and broadband penetration. He's also supporting us with the EVC, the NCC as well, with addressing issues around right-of-ways, security of our infrastructure, which will help us deliver, first of all, a better quality of service, and also help in the acceleration of broadband across the country. So there's a host of initiatives. One of them is really around the cost of terminals. That is a big barrier for a lot of people. But let's also recognize that we've gone from 10% data penetration to over 50. I'll wait for the results to come out in 5, 6, 7 years, and that's quite a lot of progress. And I think, it'll accelerate even faster as we go down.
So, yeah, that's fair, and it was a roundabout way, but yes, it because quite honestly, one telco can't do it, right? It has to be the entire ecosystem working together. And yes, I hear a lot of work being done on the infrastructure side. I think people ask, right, if device affordability is probably the biggest barrier. Like, it's said that a 4G phone or a smartphone is probably the only computer a lot of Nigerians are ever going to have. If that's the case, then what kind of intentional efforts would you like to see specifically when it comes to device affordability? Let me even buttress that with several things. In Rwanda, as an example, or Kenya actually, they now do local manufacturing or local, not manufacturing, but assembly, yes, of their devices, which helps bring down the cost. Those types of initiatives. Because anywhere else in the world, you don't have to pay for the phone upfront 100%, right? You get to pay it over a year, 2 years, your plan, whatever plan you have. In Nigeria and like a lot of other countries, you go and you buy it retail 100% before you can enter this world. The cost of a smartphone, even the most affordable smartphone, is what, 50,000 naira. So in the perfect world, what type of interventions would you like to see to bridge this gap?
So look, the first thing is the cost of smartphones has come down rapidly. And that's driven by global demand. So Nigeria on its own, as big as we are, giant of Africa, will not be able to drive those kind of volumes to bring down the unitary cost as fast as it has happened globally. Countries like China, India all contribute to the driving of those pricing down. So there's been a lot of reduction in costs, probably by 60, 70, 80% in the cost of these devices. So that's one. So we get tailwinds from global demand.
Yes.
Local assembly does certainly a number of things. First of all, it can potentially bring down the cost of production. It eliminates customs duties.
Yes.
Okay. And then you talk about people financing handsets. And for that financing ecosystem to work, you need to have adequate credit scoring history to know who to loan to, recovery capabilities,
yes,
et cetera, et
indeed.
cetera. Now, we're already working on that. There's quite a number of companies in Africa, in Nigeria, that are working on that in partnership with us. There's some East African companies that have quite a lot of experience, not just with smartphones, with white goods as well, fridges, etc.
Right, yes.
That we're partnering. We think it takes a bit of time for that momentum to be built. We think our mobile money PSB, people having wallets and us being able to look at their behavior, predict their credit worthiness is key. But you're right. For an individual who's really at the bottom of the subsistence of this country, to fork out 40,000 at one go is a challenge. But if you can break that up with reasonable finance charges and spread it over 2-3 years, and the person is responsible and repaying, then we really can open up a whole new sector. And I know it's a very big focus area of Dr. Bosun Tijani, the Honorable Minister, and we're working with him and with our regulators to ensure that we can expand that market significantly.
Fantastic. A lot more to come. Please stay tuned as we take a break. Welcome back to Tech into the Future. I am still here with Mr. Carl Toriola, the CEO for MTN Nigeria. Welcome back to the program. So let me ask you, so MTN is evolving its positioning from being a telco to being a digital company. What is the difference between the two, and what does it take to become a digital company?
It's quite a significant difference, and effectively we're transforming our DNA. You know, a telco is pretty much an infrastructure business. You build infrastructure, you build capacity. There is a lot of technology in there, make no mistake. But it's a different kind of DNA, and a lot of the services that are used by customers are intuitive.
Right.
They don't need to develop a lot of skills to use them. To transform to a digital company, we have to transform our competence, and we're transforming from an infrastructure company business to pretty much a platform business. So we have to transform our competence in the commercial front. How do you acquire and retain customers for digital services, financial services, digital services, consumption of content, etc. And so our competence in how do you market to those kind of people, how do you retain them, understanding what their needs are, needs that are not as intuitive as the need to make a phone call, send a message, send a picture, etc., etc., and developing products to suit that need that are ahead of the curve of the products that are already in the market. So it's a huge transformation in terms of the personality of MTN. And what's that's quite challenging. You see, when a company is large and successful, the primary focus for shareholders and people who govern those kind of businesses is actually protecting that revenue base. And at times, to transform yourself so radically, you almost have to destroy your old identity and recreate a new one, which within itself poses risks to protecting that revenue base that we make of telco. So it's a transition we're going through as aggressively as we can. Takes a lot of change. You have to create structures to grow those new businesses. We have a chief digital officer as an example. We've established our fintech company, which has Momo PSB. We've brought in specialists from Ghana who have rolled this kind of services out. And we need a lot more agility than the traditional infrastructure telecoms company. So, I mean, we could talk for ages on this, but I hope that gives some sense of.
Yes, it definitely does. Did you have to do restructuring of the actual org? So, like, did any you know when you're trying to streamline for a different DNA, I would imagine that there would be some restructuring, but we never heard of anything. There's a bloodbath in the telco, in the technology industry, but we haven't heard anything. So I think I'm more amazed that this transition or this transformation is happening, which in my mind would mean that you're upskilling as well your actual human capacity that you have, right? As opposed to what we've seen other places when people are trying to transform themselves, where there will be a bloodbath. But bloodbath, I just mean like there will be a lot of
Headcount.
Yes, exactly.
So look, we are transforming ourselves, and we are integrating our digital competence into what we have currently. There's no news about the bloodbath because I think we've been very efficient. We haven't grown our core functions at the speed at which our top line has grown. So we have space to recruit the resources for the new business lines that we're pursuing. What often happens is companies get too bloated.
Right.
And if they want to start getting new competencies, new executives, new managers, they can't bear that cost. So they have to cut down drastically the old structure to accommodate the space for new structure. But because we've been focused on efficiency all along, we've been able to grow those areas of new revenue streams. Broadband, we have a chief broadband officer, we have a chief digital officer, both of them ladies, by the way. And then we have a CEO of Momo PSB and our financial services business. And we've grown those structures as we continue to transform the competence of the people that we have focused on the core business into a much more digital space.
Fantastic. It's amazing. Now, I have to ask you, what is going on between MTN and Glo? And I don't mean to put you under any particular pressure, but it's everywhere. We're talking about it. And it's not the first time, if I recall correctly, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was a time when you couldn't reach a Glo number with an MTN number. And we've seen it in the news that there is something, just for help us. What is going on between MTN and Glo?
Why did I suspect you were going to ask this question? Look, I don't think we should. I know you're going to be disappointed, but I don't think we should really air out those differences we may have in public. Suffice it to say that we have what I think is probably between the NCC and the CBN the most developed regulatory bodies who arbitrate on such matters. And whatever we do in that dispute or that discourse will be in line with what the NCC dictates. The NCC is very competent in assessing these matters. They've come out with authorizations for disconnection. That is being put on hold to give an opportunity to address these issues. But what I can say, I don't want to get into details of them, is MTN will always act in the most professional, most compliant manner and will not do anything that hasn't been explicitly authorized either by our license conditions or by the regulator.
Okay, so let me just press on that a little bit to ask, what do you say to those that, because there's a school of thought that MTN is being a bully, that MTN is big, MTN is trying to create a monopoly. There's also the thinking that, oh, this is, like Glo is our Nigerian indigenous operator, right? I don't think that can be said now because MTN is, for all intents and purposes, a Nigerian company. But there is the thinking that, or there's the opinion that MTN is being a bully. Anything you want to say about that?
No, so first I'll reaffirm what you said. We're a Nigerian company registered in Nigeria.
Yes, you are.
Nigerian shareholders, very seasoned board of Nigerian directors, as well as some international directors. So we're a Nigerian company, and I'm very proud of the fact that if you look at our leadership cadre, you will see that this company is like 90% led at the very top level by Nigerians. And I don't think we have more than 10 expatriates in this company. So we're
Amazing.
Nigerian, full stop.
Yes.
By no means whatsoever do we bully any of our competitors. None whatsoever. And the NCC wouldn't allow it. We've grown to this size because we've done the right things at the right time. You cannot force customers to make a choice with their wallets.
Very true.
Okay? If customers are not more satisfied with us, they will go to another operator overnight. And the speed at which SIM cards and telephone numbers are changed in Nigeria is probably the fastest anywhere in the world. Now, when you're successful, you will get darts thrown at you.
Yeah.
If I take a comparative to the banking industry, okay, the FUGAs in the banking industry are all Nigerian banks, and those are the banks that hold the highest number of customers in Nigeria. And there are other foreign banks in Nigeria as well, Standard Chartered, Stanbic IBTC, etc., etc. Those banks did the right things to attract customers and to serve customers, and they're enjoying the rewards of that success. And MTN is number one because we've done the right things to attract customers. And I will challenge you, I dare say to you, that if you look at any regulatory body that MTN interfaces with, they will probably, I can't speak for them, will probably tell you that we're the most compliant organization. And we have a host of awards to confirm that. From the FIRS, the NCC does network quality studies all the time. We have the NGX that has given us awards as the most compliant companies, and it goes on and on. You do the right things at the right time, you will get the customers that will come to you. I always express, we are not perfect, okay? We know there's a lot of customers there that are dissatisfied, but we continue to strive to do better. But unfortunately, at a certain level of success, you will always have some complaints. I think we should fight in the market.
Yeah.
I think whoever's giving the best quality of service will get the customers, and if MTN is not doing that, we will pay the price by a loss of customers and revenue. That's all you really need to do. And we've seen it's competitive forces determine the best player in the market, and the best player gets the rewards for it.
Fantastic response. Thank you very much. I have to ask, what keeps you up at night?
Oh, a million and one things.
Do you sleep?
Look, we're excited with the direction of the new government, but it's going to take some time to settle the macro. And during this period of turbulence, it's difficult for everyone. It's not MTN, it's us, it's our competitors, it's our vendors, it's our customers, it's the regulatory authority bodies that are tasked with holding us to account and generating revenue for the government. It's everyone. So, of course, the macro is a turbulent time. It worries us. Customer service, every single day is a worry. Cybersecurity,
Yes.
In the environments that we live in, airtime is almost a near cash item. So we're very razor focused on cybersecurity. We have probably the most advanced systems in Nigeria to protect us from cybersecurity threats, and we have rigorous governance around that. Technology evolutions. You can sit pretty thinking you're a company in a safe space, large customer base, etc. But a technology evolution can take that away from you in the space of 2 years.
Yeah.
So probably one of my biggest fears is complacency. Getting too comfortable with your size and your scale. That terrifies me because I know what that does to a lot of companies.
Yes, and we've seen that happen. I think one that always comes to mind is the camera, right? I don't think Kodak ever realized that the phone was going to take over its prominence as and there's so many of those to go on and on.
In our industry, Nokia.
In our industry, yeah, Nokia. In fact, also, what was it now? BlackBerry, right? Yeah, they had the dominance as well, and then doesn't exist anymore. RIM. And so, thank you very much for your time, Mr. Toriola. Before we go, do you have any final notes or any final thing we can expect from MTN? Anything you want to leave us with that we can expect or we can look forward to hearing from MTN?
So, I mean, first of all, let me say that we are very much in tune with the macro, not just for large corporates, but for our consumers and their disposable income. So we'll continue to strive to be the best partner for Nigerians in their lifestyles, in the digitization of their lifestyles, in their businesses, etc. But in terms of key focus areas, Amomo PSB makes every single telephone number on an MTN network an account number, which once you register, dial in *671# and you've set your PIN code, you can immediately start to transact and receive money from other financial institutions, pay your friends, pay your bills. So that's a big focus area to increase financial inclusion, particularly in the rural areas. We are razor focused in increasing our broadband penetration through a variety of channels. Our 4G, which has now become almost traditional.
Yes.
But we're very excited about our 5G. We've quadrupled towards the end of last year our coverage on 5G and capacity. Of course, that serves the urban areas, primarily state capitals, commercial centers, etc., but really brings first-class technological connectivity to Nigerians, and we're very proud of that, and we think there's a huge opportunity to serve customers with much better quality of service. We're also rolling out our fiber to the X, that could be the building, the office, the home solution, so we think we're going to be a big part of fiberization of Nigeria. As we continue to launch digital services products, content around music, voice, gaming, education particularly. And then above all, I think we want to be a strong partner to the government, to all facets of the government, but particularly the digital agenda of the Honorable Minister and the parastatals that report to him. In the transformation of the economy of Nigeria to the digital economy. Finally, there's work ongoing on our Enugu-Onitsha refurbishment of the dual expressway, about 108 kilometers. That is physically in progress. I think Nigerians will be in the East, we're very pleased to see the progress there to where the commute becomes easier. And we're proceeding with the design of our head office. I'm not sure if we'll break ground this year. I hope so. Otherwise, early next year, we'll advance on that. So those are the key focus areas.
Where is your head office going to be?
No, we're not going to break that.
You're not going to break it here?
But we've procured the land.
Fantastic.
Design is ongoing, and we'll make it an iconic state-of-the-art green building in Lagos. That's going to be a focal point.
Fantastic. I must say, I am from Enugu, and I have seen the roads that MTN is
okay.
building. I actually was in Enugu over the holidays, and I've seen the road, and I am quite impressed. I can't wait for it to be finished. So well done to MTN. Thank you very much. You're still watching Tech into the Future. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Tech into the Future. That was a fantastic interview. Absolutely riveting.
It was, wasn't it? So tell me, what were the parts that you loved the most?
I really liked the customer first strategy.
Yes.
I mean, I cover the tech industry, and so customer first is a mantra that a lot of the companies that we cover believe in, and one that we believe in as well. If you are laser focused on the needs of your customer, it's hard to go wrong. And in a company that big, I think it's a discipline that's hard to maintain, because it's very, very easy to deal with the politics of the country, the internal politics of the business, the needs of your suppliers, the needs of your partners, the needs of the shareholders, and it's very, very easy to forget the customer. So if that is something that they really are keeping as a core focus of the company, and if it really is the guiding light for how it is that they do business, then I think it does explain how they deliver such big numbers consistently.
Exactly. And you see, one of the things I liked about what he said was that, honestly, there's no route to the answer. If we're not delivering decent service, then people will not be on our network, because they do have options. And so that's the thing, that if we just keep the customer as our focal point, then everything else will fall into place.
I mean, it's really interesting, because you do hear people complain very, very frequently. You know, you go on X or you go on the streets, and people are like, I have not had network for 3 days or whatever it is. But I guess comparatively, compared to where it is we're coming, and I guess compared to the other networks, they must be doing something strong that's kept them sort of in a leadership position for so long.
Yeah, I would even go as far as saying something better. Is that proper? Better, because I mean, the numbers speak for itself, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was Carl's point, is that we're not bullying anybody, we're not strong-arming anybody. You can't strong somebody with their own money, right? It's my money. I decide what I want to do with it. And so when I have to make a choice, somebody has to be the clear option for me. And I think people are speaking with their money. And you know what? He was also fair to say that the minute we're not satisfying the customers, as you know, at least to the degree that they want to share their wallets with MTN, it will show.
Yeah, and I mean, we have seen that when network quality has gone down on some of their competitors, and we've seen numbers really, really bleed quite aggressively over the last few years for one or two of those players. I think bringing it back to the central theme of this episode being the digital divide, his answer to that was really interesting. I liked his point about the need for us to push forward into 5G to make the most up-to-date technology available to Africans and to Nigerian customers. I thought that was really important, and in keeping with our conversation last week around sort of AI and the need to stay at the cutting edge or be left behind as a country. So I thought that was a really, really interesting point, and I did like that. It doesn't answer the question of your 100 million people who are a little bit behind, and it seems like we might need to go looking for those answers elsewhere.
Indeed. So you're right. We have to be able to, what did you say? Walk and chew gum.
Walk and chew gum.
Exactly. So we move for 5G because that's where the industry is. And then we figure out a way to bring 2G players onto 4G and then 5G eventually. And the truth is, it's not a one-person game. MTN can't do it on their own. There's stakeholders, and there's an entire ecosystem, right? From the Minister of ICT and Digital Economy to the NCC. Exactly, right? So there's a lot of stakeholders that hopefully will get the opportunity to interview.
We will.
Yes. To interview and at least have an understanding as to what the intentionality is behind closing this gap. Now, what did you think about his comment on the feud? Or the no feud?
There's no feud. There's no feud. There are business people doing business. I thought it was really interesting. Nigeria is an interesting place to do business with a range of business behaviors and habits from players. And I think that it's an instructional moment to watch the way this plays out. It will be an interesting moment to watch how this plays out fully, because you essentially have a player who is being accused of not meeting their obligations and has been accused of that for years on end. It's one of those things that tests whether you're a country of laws or not.
Exactly.
It also puts the regulator to the test in terms
Yes.
of how it is that they manage this. Because if one player, Glow, is able to not pay their bills, it affects the integrity of the entire system.
It does.
And if the other players aren't able to sort of seek recompense and find a way to like move things forward, then again you continue to endanger the integrity of what is a fundamental communications, banking, informational system
Exactly.
for the entire country. So it is a test. It is a testing moment, you know.
So suffice it then to say that there's a lot riding on the regulator of this industry, and it's now on several levels. Yes, it's on this in terms of just making sure that players are fair to each other, right? Because I think that we would be the gainers, I guess, of what they do.
Yeah.
So that's on the on this issue with MTN and Glo.
Yeah.
But even still, with the closing the divide, right? There's a lot of there's been a lot of talk, and to be honest, and to be fair, a lot of the things they have done have been on the infrastructure side, right?
Yeah.
Making sure that there's coverage, right, et cetera, et cetera. However, the device is what you need. You cannot access it. Doesn't matter how much coverage you have. You can cover Nigeria 100%. If I don't have a device to get onto the internet, then it's of no consequence.
So we're going to have a conversation with some of the device makers. We're going to have a conversation with some of the people who should be subsidizing, devices.
Device financing,
and
exactly.
There's going to be a lot of conversation around that.
Even the credit, with open banking, right? So even folks that are able to give you credit, right? And all the other things, identity is going to have to come into this, because part of the problem is that people cannot give you credit because they can't identify you if you run away. So it's not just the NCC, to be fair. There's a lot of other stakeholders in this.
And I think there's also, finally, a really important point, which is the macroeconomy matters. Because credit's all well and good, but people need to be earning enough money to be able to repay these loans when they take these loans. I think a really important aspect of the tech industry is, and we've seen this across the entire tech ecosystem, is it's hard to build a progressive, forward, and aggressive, fast-moving industry with people who aren't making money. So if people are getting poorer, it's harder to build a robust tech ecosystem. And so the macroeconomics really, really matter for the tech ecosystem, and they really matter for things like bridging the digital divide, bringing people into 4G or 5G technologies, and that's going to be an important aspect for us to sort of interrogate as we move forward.
Indeed.
Thanks for joining us for Tech into the Future today. Join us next time as we take you into the business and impact of tech in Africa, how it's changing the world, and how it's changing your world. Stay tuned on Arise News.